Hello students, welcome to Vidya Jyoti Academy. This is Ahmed Sheikh here, your science teacher. We are learning chapter number 6, life processes. This is video 2.2 and today's topic is human digestive system. Before getting started with the lecture, I would like you students to hit the subscribe button so that you can get updates of more upcoming videos. So let's start the lecture. So we have the entire human digestive system in your screen in front of you. Once all of these bubbles are filled, we can conclude that we have learned all of the aspects of human digestive system. We'll be learning step by step that how these food particles get digested in various regions of the body with the help of few organs and the enzymes which are secreted in those organs. In this video, we learn about the human digestive system in a very great detail, that too in step-by-step manner, where we'll see that how the food gets digested by participation of different chemicals secreted by different organs. So before getting started with this part, we'll have a quick revision that what we have learned about nutrition till now and which are relevant topics of nutrition that we are going to learn today. So the first thing that we should know is the human digestive system is a kind of heterotrophic mode of nutrition, where we know the definition for heterotrophic mode of nutrition, in which the organism is dependent on other living organisms for their food. The nutrition obtained by these organisms are in the form of complex compounds, which are digested to simpler compounds for energy growth and maintenance of body. We've already understood this in previous video that in heterotrophic mode of nutrition, the organism will be dependent upon other living organisms for their nutrition. The next one that we should know about is the holozoic mode of nutrition. You students might be knowing the definition for holozoic mode of nutrition because that is covered in the previous video too. The definition for holozoic mode of nutrition is, it is a kind of a heterotrophic mode of nutrition in which the entire food is taken inside the body and then digested into simple useful compounds. It means that the entire food will be taken inside the body and that food will be decomposed into simple compounds. Those simple compounds will be useful for the body and will be absorbed. The leftover undigested part or wasteful part will be expelled out of the body. The next thing that we should know about is the alimentary canal. What do you mean by alimentary canal? So we can say that the alimentary canal is a long tubular structure in our body through which the food moves. This tube is also the place where absorption of nutrients take place, and the length of the alimentary canal depends upon the diet of that particular organism. For example, if the organism of whom we are talking about is herbivorous, it means that that organism will be dependent upon plants or parts of plant for their food. Now once these organisms eat the plant or part of the plant, they intake huge amount of cellulose into their body. You should remember that digestion of cellulose is much harder and therefore their alimentary canal needs to be more longer as compared to carnivorous. Carnivorous animals are those who are dependent upon flesh for their food. Flesh contains most of all proteins, which is relatively much easier to digest as compared to cellulose, and therefore the alimentary canal of carnivorous animal are smaller. Therefore, the length of the alimentary canal of carnivorous animal is shorter. Still, before starting with actual digestion process, you students should be knowing few definitions so that it will be easy for you to understand whatever I am trying to explain to you. So we look to some definitions. So these are few definitions that you should have a note of them and should remember it also. The first word that we'll talk about is catalyst. So catalysts are substances or chemicals which can be introduced into a chemical reaction to increase its rate. What do you mean by increasing its rate? It means that to foster the chemical reaction. But there's a twist in it also. This catalyst will not be used in the chemical reaction. Rather, it will simply increase the rate of the reaction. The next thing that we should know is enzymes, and definition for enzymes is, it is a biocatalyst which enhances rate of biochemical process. If you analyze this definition properly, the start of this definition is biocatalyst. We already have learned the meaning of catalyst. It is just prefixed with the word bio. Bio refers to living thing. So it is a catalyst made by living thing which enhances biochemical processes. In short, we can say enzymes are those chemicals which are produced and used inside our body to increase the rate of chemical processes. The next word is gland, and the definition for gland is they are the organs in the body whose function is to secrete enzymes or hormones. We've already learned about enzymes, and to speak about hormones is a complete different video which we'll be having later on. The next word is sphincter muscle. And sphincter muscle are regulatory muscles present in various places in alimentary canal which regulates the rate of flow of food. But we don't expect the food to move in a very fast rate inside the alimentary canal, because if that happens so, the food will not be digested by the enzymes secreted by different organs. Nor do we require the food to move too slow, or else the energy production process will be slowed down. So to control that, the food should be moving inside the alimentary canal in a very regulated rate. This is controlled by the sphincter muscle. We'll see in a moment the places in the alimentary canal where sphincter muscles are present. The last word that we should know about is emulsification. So emulsification is a process in which two liquids which are insoluble to each other, for example water and oil, which usually makes two different layers, can be mixed together by adding a third agent. The third agent will be called as the emulsifying agent. The example given over here is, while mixing the mixture of water and oil, we can use soap as an emulsification agent, which on mixing them to the mixture can help the water to get soluble with oil. This process is called as emulsification. So these are all the definitions that you students should be having note of, and will be coming across these words in the explanation that I'll be giving you right now. So we are good to go to understand the process of human digestive system right away. Now you students should be knowing about this, that the first place where digestion actually takes place inside the human body is the mouth. So we'll talk about mouth in detail right now. Mouth is also called as buccal cavity, and it is a place where the food starts to digest. It contains the teeth, salivary gland and tongue, which works together to accomplish digestion of food. Though the digestion of food doesn't take place completely inside the mouth, but the food gets partially digested. The three important components of mouth, that is the teeth, salivary gland and tongue, we'll be learning about these in quite big detail. First of all, we'll learn about teeth. Teeth is useful to break food particles into small pieces so that different enzymes act on them and make it easier to swallow food. Based on the function of teeth, teeth can be broadly classified into four great categories. The first one is incisor. Incisors are those set of teeth which are present just in front of the mouth. Their main function is to cut teeth, and in all we have 4 incisors, 2 on upper jaw and 2 on the lower one. The second type of teeth is canine. The function of these teeth is tearing and cracking hard food. We have a total of 4 canines, 2 on the upper jaw and 2 on the lower one. Premolar and molar are the set of teeth which are used for grinding of food so that the food can be converted into small pieces. So that's all about teeth. The next one that we'll be talking about is the salivary gland. If you observe the image given over here, this image shows you the location and the set of salivary glands present inside our mouth. So it's not a single gland but a set of glands which helps to secrete some enzymes. So let's see what does this gland do. The first one is it secretes an enzyme called as saliva in the food. So this saliva makes a food particle wet so that it may slip easily into the esophagus. The saliva contains an enzyme called as salivary amylase, whose function is to convert starch into sucrose. If you remember, the starch is a product of photosynthesis. It means that whenever we eat any material which is obtained from plants, it may contain starch. So that starch can be converted into sucrose. To have a practical realization of this, you can have one small observation. Whenever you'll be having any meal, so at that time if you eat rice or chapati or potato, try to chew it more than usual. You realize that that bolus of food will turn sweeter. This is because the starch present in rice, chapati or the potato gets converted into sucrose, which is a type of a sugar. The saliva also contains an enzyme called as lysozyme. It is an antibacterial enzyme which kills the bacteria present inside our mouth as well as inside the food. So that's all about salivary gland. We'll move to tongue right now. Now we all know that the function of tongue is to taste. It contains kind of a neuron called as gustatory receptors, which are responsible for sensing different taste. It also helps us to turn and roll the food so that saliva mixes inside the food bolus properly and helps to push the bolus of food to the esophagus, which is also the food pipe. So that all happens inside the mouth, and we've understood that how different components of the mouth works in coordinated manner so that the food gets partially digested over here. Moving on to the next part is the esophagus. So we saw the initialization of digestion inside the mouth. The next comes is a huge tube over here, which is called as esophagus and in general can be called as the food pipe also. This food pipe connects the mouth to the stomach which is present over here. So we will see what does esophagus do. So esophagus is also called as a food pipe and it passes parallelly along with the trachea, which is the windpipe. So you might have been through this situation where while eating, if you speak with someone, your food gets choked in your throat and you feel a severe pain in your chest. That's because the food which is to be pushed to inside the esophagus accidentally moves towards the trachea. Trachea is a passage through which air moves, and we'll be learning about this in the respiration part of this lesson. So esophagus and trachea, they both meet together inside the throat, which is called as the pharynx. From that, these two parallel pipes moves along. Trachea emerges with the lungs and esophagus emerges with the stomach. Now, inside the esophagus, the food bolus moves in it in a rhythmic contraction and relaxation movement. This rhythmic movement is called as peristaltic movement, or you can simply say peristalsis. And this movement will be followed from esophagus throughout the alimentary canal. The end of the esophagus contains a sphincter muscle which allows the food to enter the stomach in a regulated manner. You might have also experienced this, that whenever you eat food hurriedly, at that time the food gets accumulated on your chest and you start to feel a severe pain. That is because no matter how fast you eat the food, that food is still going to enter the stomach in a regulated manner, which is controlled by the sphincter muscle. So you should always remember that food should never be eaten hurriedly, because that can cause problems for respiration, because we should remember this, that the esophagus and trachea both run parallel. So once the food pipe is occupied with the space, the trachea gets contracted, and that is why the person feels breathlessness. So that's all about esophagus. Now we've understood that the digestion of food takes place inside the mouth. Then the food bolus is pushed by the tongue inside the long tube called as esophagus, and then that tube delivers the food inside the stomach. So we'll be understanding what process takes place inside the stomach. So the stomach is a highly muscular organ. It means it is made up of very strong muscles, and its inner wall secretes gastric juices which helps in the digestion of food. The muscles over here contracts and relaxes, which helps to churn the food and helps to mix the gastric juices with the food bolus. From here on, the food bolus will be called as chyme because it is no longer similar to what you have eaten. Now talking about the gastric juices that the stomach have released, those gastric juices contains three different chemicals. The first one is the hydrochloric acid, the second one is pepsinogen, and the third one is mucus. We'll see their functions right now. Hydrochloric acid is responsible to kill the pathogen present inside the food bolus, which might have escaped the action of lysozyme, which is present inside the saliva. Hence, it tries its best to make the food disease-free. Also, it makes the medium acidic so that pepsinogen, which will be secreted later, can be get converted into pepsin. The next one is pepsinogen. Pepsin itself gets converted into pepsin, which is an enzyme, and the function of pepsin is to partially digest proteins to peptic acids. Now, peptic acids will be later on be digested into amino acids, but that's a story of another organ. Mucus protects the inner wall of the stomach from action of hydrochloric acid digesting the stomach itself. Now, because stomach releases pepsinogen, which is responsible to convert proteins, the stomach is in a danger to digest itself. So from preventing the action of hydrochloric acid in pepsin to the stomach itself, it contains a layer of mucus in the inner wall of the stomach. So these are all the functions of the gastric juices which are secreted by the stomach. Moving on. So we've understood the digestion of food initializes inside the mouth. It is taken through a long pipe, delivers it to the stomach. The stomach releases several chemicals, which includes gastric juices also, which helps to partially digest the food particles. Now this chyme exits the stomach in a regulated manner by another sphincter muscle. So the end of the stomach also has a sphincter muscle. So this sphincter muscle allows food to move from the stomach, entering into the small intestine in a regulated manner. So once the food enters the small intestine, further digestion takes place. So we'll understand more about small intestine right now. The small intestine is highly coiled tube. What do you mean by coiled? It means that it is turned within itself, and that is why it is placed inside the abdominal cavity. The small intestine is longer than the large intestine, but named as small intestine due to its smaller diameter. The diameter of the gut is referred to as lumen, which is spelled as L-U-M-E-N, but for the sake of simplicity, we'll use the word diameter over here only. So the regions and the functions of small intestine is the duodenum is around 25 centimeter in length, and it is a point where chyme enters the small intestine, leaving the stomach. The end of hepatopancreatic ducts merge here which secretes bile juice and pancreatic juices. We'll understand what is hepatopancreatic ducts in a while. The next portion of the small intestine is the jejunum, the long tubular pipe through which food flows and allows action of mixed juices to take place. So it's the portion where food flows through a long tubular portion and different juices are mixed over here. The next one is ileum, where the diameter is reduced so much that the chyme over here flows in a relatively slower rate. This is necessary to get enough time for proper absorption of digested nutrients, which are done by finger-like projections called as villi. Now before understanding the digestions and the action of juices that are taking place inside the small intestine, we need to understand few glands over here. So the action of three glands, which is the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas over here, is to be understood. So let us understand liver first. The liver is the largest organ in the human body. It is responsible to produce bile juice, which is stored in the gallbladder, which is a gland present just underneath the liver. Now we should understand this and keep in mind that liver has many functions in the body. But since we are learning human digestive system, we'll restrict the function of liver to digestive system itself. The liver stores excess digested glucose in the form of glycogen as stored reserve of glucose. So if the body receives a large amount of glucose, that glucose will be converted into glycogen, and that glycogen will be stored inside the liver. In time when the body is in need of glucose, the stored glycogen inside the liver can be converted back into glucose by an action of an hormone called as glucagon, which is produced by the pancreas. Once the glycogen is converted into glucose by the action of glucagon, that glucose can be diffused back into the bloodstream to balance the sugar level. The next one is the gallbladder. You might remember that the liver is responsible to produce bile juices. Now these bile juices which is produced by the liver will be stored inside the gallbladder. The gallbladder contains a duct. A duct can be assumed as a long tube through which some chemicals can be released to a specific site. This duct of the gallbladder is called as hepatopancreatic duct. So we'll understand function of bile juice. You might remember that the action of hydrochloric acid inside the stomach made the medium acidic, and that is why it is to be converted again into basic or alkaline in nature, which is done by the bile juice. Now why to do so? So that the pancreatic juice may act on it. Until and unless the medium is not alkaline in nature, the pancreatic juice may not act on the food, leading to undigestion of food. The bile salt present in the bile juice helps in breaking down huge globules of fat into small ones. This process is called as emulsification. Then the next gland that we should know about is the pancreas. Pancreas is present just below the stomach, and it is responsible to secrete pancreatic juice to the small intestine through again the hepatopancreatic duct. So we should understand this, that the hepatopancreatic duct is a common duct which is used by both the pancreas as well as the gallbladder. The pancreas contains enzymes like trypsin, which is responsible for digestion of proteins, lipase, which is responsible to digest small broken pieces of fat. Coming back again to the small intestine, we come to know that the complete digestion of food takes place in the small intestine. The wall of the small intestine secretes digestive juices after secretion by hepatopancreatic duct. It means that once the hepatopancreatic duct is done with secreting the bile juice from gallbladder and pancreatic juice from pancreas, the small intestine starts to secrete its own juices from its wall. The following conversion will take place inside the small intestine. First of all, proteins will be get converted into amino acids, fats will be get converted into fatty acids or glycerol, and carbohydrates will be get converted into glucose. Amino acid, fatty acid and glycerol as well as glucose, these are the fundamental nutrients which is useful to the human body. These can be useful for growth, production of energy as well as maintaining the body functions also. Now how does these digested nutrients get absorbed? So it is done by these structures, and we can say that the inner lining of the ileum consists of finger-like projections supplied with blood vessels. These projections will be called as villi. So if you see, this is the finger-like projection which will be present in the inner lining of the ileum, and these are the blood vessels which will be responsible for taking those nutrients from the villi and diffusing it with the blood. Its primary function is to absorb the digested nutrient and diffuse it inside the bloodstream. These projection also increases the total surface area available for absorption of nutrient. So if you look the diagram properly, so if you look the diagram closely, you'll see that this is the finger-like projection, and these are the blood vessels which are supplied to it, which will be taking the nutrients absorbed from this layer, which is the inner portion of the intestine, and will be taking it diffused inside the bloodstream, and then will be taking it to different organs of the body. So that's all to understand about the small intestine. Now we can move ahead. So we saw that after moving from the stomach, the chyme enters the small intestine where the complete digestion of food takes place and the simplest nutrients are absorbed and diffused inside the bloodstream. Then the next part which comes in the process is the large intestine. So let's see about that. The large intestine is called as large intestine despite of being shorter than length is due to its large radius. So large radius over here refers to large lumen. Water as well as some dissolved salt, including vitamins, are absorbed through villi in this organ. All the undigested food are pushed then forward. Then comes the matter of undigested food, which is present inside this portion just after the large intestine. This is the place where undigested food is stored, which is called as the rectum, and once when it is allowed, that undigested food can get expelled out of our body through an opening called as anus. So you'll understand that also. So we have rectum. So the function of rectum is, it is the spot where undigested food are stored. The anus is a part through which the feces or stool is expelled out of the body. So we've understood the entire human digestive system right now, and I hope that you might have understood it properly. Well, so that's end of the nutrition topic. So this homework is of the entire nutrition topic. If you've missed any video, be sure to watch them before starting with this homework also. You guys can pause the video for a while and have a note of all these questions. So that's all for today. And we're done with the topic of nutrition. In the coming video, we'll learn about respiration in great detail. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you've missed any of the video from nutrition topic, be sure to click these links so that you can get access to those videos. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you might not miss any of the updates of our new videos. Thank you guys. Meet you soon.